Hi, and welcome to Ivy English. I'm Angela.
And I'm Wesley.
Today is July 19th. We're on page 52 of the magazine, and today's article, and also tomorrow's article, is about mosaics through time. And I'm telling you, I used to, when I was younger, not be that into mosaics, but now that I know how much planning and mathematics and engineering goes into a mosaic, I'm more and more impressed when I see a good one.
好，那首先我们看这个标题啊，我们的中文标题是历史与艺术的邂逅，马赛克。好，那我们要谈的是马赛克。那刚刚 Angela 老师说呢，他以前觉得马赛克没什么，但他现在知道说，其实马赛克要做得好是非常复杂的，而且你可能要有很多很精密的计算啊等等的，所以他现在越来越佩服马赛克。
Also, in Taipei, they've started to do mosaics on the sort of the walls around the city that protect us from the rivers. And that is just a way cooler idea than putting painting because they last longer, they look good for longer. And when they're done really well, they can be really beautiful. Like there's a mosaic on the end of Nanjing West Road. If you go to Nanjing West Road, it looks like you're looking through the wall and seeing this beautiful sunset in the river park. It looks like the wall has been disappeared by the mosaic. It's a very cool effect.
所以这个 Angela 老师说呢，台北市有一些在比如说河堤可能现在他们想到用马赛克。那他说像南京西路走到底呢，它有一个马赛克非常的漂亮，好像你看到那个墙好像是可以看透，穿过那个墙看到那个落日之类的，非常漂亮。
It's so well done. Okay, so let's talk about mosaics through time. When you think of artwork, especially ancient works of art, you probably imagine paintings or sculptures. One form of art that often gets overlooked is mosaics. Mosaics are a pattern or image made up of small pieces of stone, glass, or ceramic. They can be found on floors, walls, and ceilings. They are works of art, but they are also about architectural and interior design. They can be utterly spectacular, and they have a long history. The oldest known mosaics date back to the 3rd millennium BCE and were found in a temple in what used to be Mesopotamia or modern-day Iraq. These ancient mosaics feature a variety of materials that were locally sourced, such as stones, seashells, and ivory. Other old mosaics that can be traced back to the Bronze Age, from roughly 3000 BCE to 1000 BCE, have been unearthed in Greece. Mosaics were incredibly popular during the time of the Greek and Roman empires. Starting from around the 3rd century BCE, mosaics in the Mediterranean began to feature tesserae, or small square tiles, rather than pebbles, to create more intricate designs and patterns. Mosaics were also widely used in and around religious sites. Wall and ceiling mosaics decorated many Christian churches starting in the 4th century. Artists in the 5th and 6th centuries adorned Jewish synagogues with floor mosaics. In the 7th century, Islamic architects decorated mosques and palaces with mosaics. Mosaics found in Central America go all the way back to the time of the Maya Empire. This discovery indicates that the art of creating mosaics developed independently in the region rather than being introduced by other cultures. Okay, we're stopping here, and we'll do the rest of the article tomorrow. So let's go back to the beginning. When you think of artwork, when you think of works of art, especially ancient works of art, you probably imagine paintings or sculptures because that's mostly what we're shown in museums. And one of the reasons we're shown these in museums is that paintings and sculptures are more movable. You can move them easily from place to place, whereas a mosaic is usually stuck to the wall and not, therefore, that easily moved. You either have to move the whole wall or you have to disassemble the mosaic and put it together someplace else.
好，所以呢，他讲到说，当你 think of 想到 artwork 艺术品的时候，尤其是 ancient 古代的 works of art 艺术品那 you probably 你也许 imagine 就是你想象到的是 paintings 绘画或者是 sculptures 雕塑。好，那这个 Angela 讲说，可能是因为绘画跟雕塑是比较 movable 比较可以这个移动的，所以可以拿到处展示，所以大家就对这些东西可能比较熟悉。
Now, one form of art that often gets overlooked. If something is overlooked, it's not looked over. It means it's missed, it's left out, it's not seen. And that is mosaics. Mosaics are much less commonly shown to us as historical artwork.
那他说 one form of art 就有一种艺术的形式，那这种艺术形式是怎么样呢？ That often gets overlooked， 常常被忽略gets overlooked 就是被忽略，所以常常被忽略的一种艺术形式是什么呢？是 mosaics。
Mosaics are a pattern or image made up of small pieces of stone, glass, or ceramic. So it's basically physical pieces that are put into place to depict a piece of art. So instead of using paint colors or anything else, we use actual small tiny things and we piece them together to make an image.
好，所以 mosaics 就是马赛克是怎么样呢？ A pattern 一个图案或者是 image 一个图像，那是怎么样呢？ That are 或者 that is 这个 made up of 是由什么所组成的呢？有 small pieces of 小一块一块的 stone 石头 glass 玻璃或者是 ceramic 陶瓷。
They can be found on floors, walls, and ceilings. They can do any of these and sometimes all of these in a room.
所以 they can be found 就是他们可以被看到，可以被找到。在哪里看到，哪里找到呢？ On floors， 所以它可以是在地面上面，也可以是 walls， 可能是墙壁上面，或者是 ceilings， 天花板上。
They are works of art. They're pieces of art. They're beautiful, but they are also about architectural and interior design. And that's also what makes mosaics different from paintings or sculpture. I mean, paintings and sculpture can definitely be part of the interior of a room. But often, basically, the history of mosaics is really bound up with the history of architecture because since it's on the floor and the walls and the ceiling, it becomes part of the architecture rather than a separate art piece that's moved in later.
好，所以They 就是指 mosaics 他们是 works of art， 他们是艺术作品。但是呢 they are also about， 但他们也是跟什么有关呢？跟 architectural 就是建筑方面的，还有 interior 室内的 design 有关。换句话说，它是跟 architectural design 建筑设计有关，也跟 interior design 室内设计有关。好，那就像刚刚 Angela 老师讲的，虽然说你这个绘画雕塑也可以用来做室内设计，但是其实 mosaics 它常常是建筑本身的一部分可能就是地板就是墙壁，就是天花板所以这是不一样的地方。
They can be utterly spectacular. Utterly means completely or thoroughly. And spectacular actually comes from the word spectacle, meaning something amazing to look at. So they're spectacular. They're as amazing as a spectacle.And they have a long history.
好，那他们可以是 utterly 就是 completely， 它通常是用来强调的修饰后面的一个 spectacular 壮观，所以 mosaics 可以是非常壮观的，极为壮观的，而且呢 they have a long history， 他们有很长的历史，他们历史悠久。
The oldest known mosaics date back to the 3rd millennium BCE.If something dates back to something, it means it is as old as this. So we use the word date back to emphasize it's going to be really old. And the 3rd millennium BCE is 5,000 years ago because we're in the 2nd millennium CE, which means we've already got 2,000 years from after CE, and this is 3,000 years before CE, which is what BCE means, Common Era.So totally, these are 5,000-year-old mosaics. And they were found in a temple in what used to be Mesopotamia. Mesopotamia is the civilization that grew up between the two rivers, the Tigris and the Euphrates. And this area of the world is now occupied by modern-day Iraq. So modern-day Iraq encompasses so many of these super historical sites because That's like, in the West, we call it the cradle of civilization, but there have been several, and this is one of the cradles of civilization.
好，所以呢，我们看到说，现在 the oldest known 就是已知最古老的 Mosaics， 它 date back to 可以追溯到。那各位要记得，就是刚刚 Angel 老师讲，当英文里面讲 date back to， 它通常是表示强调这个年代很久远啊，所以它可以追溯到多久呢？追溯到公元前3000年，所以距今已经5000年了。然后呢 they were found， 他们在哪里被发现呢？在一个 temple， 一个庙。那这个庙是在哪里呢？ What used to be 就曾经是啊，这个 Mesopotamia 就是我们讲的美索不达米亚啊。那这个地方在西方的想法里面，这个是文明的摇篮啊，文明的诞生地。好，那所以但是现在已经没有所谓的美索不达米亚了。现在呢，他说是 or 这个地方是 modern day， 就是现今的伊拉克。
So these ancient mosaics, these 5,000-year-old mosaics, feature a variety of materials. They have a lot of different kind of materials in them. They're not just one kind of material. And they were, of course, locally sourced. That means they were found from the area around them because you're not going to be importing things from across the world 5,000 years ago. Or you might do, but not for like mosaics. So they used things such as stones and seashells and ivory.
那这些古老的 mosaics feature 就是以什么什么为特色，也就是他们的特色是什么呢？是 a variety of 有各种 materials 材料。那这种材料是怎么样呢？ That were locally sourced. Source 就是取材，所以都是就地取材的一些材料，但是有各种各样就地取材的材料 ，such as 他举例给你听 ，stones 石头 ，seashells 贝壳，还有 ivory 象牙。
So other old mosaics that can be traced back to the Bronze Age. Okay, traced back to is a little bit different than date back to. Date back to is like we definitely know it happened then. But if you're tracing something back to, you're like, the road leads to this. It points to that, so we think it's about then. So which is why we've said roughly 3,000 BCE to 1,000 BCE, because we've just traced it back to the Bronze Age. And the Bronze Age is what we call the age when people had already figured out that you could, like, smelt metal, but we hadn't figured out how to do it to iron. So we were doing it to copper and tin and putting it together into a pretty strong material called bronze. And so these old mosaics have been unearthed or uncovered or unburied, basically, in Greece.
好，所以呢，其他古老的 mosaics， 那 that can be traced back to 啊，就可以被中文也是讲追溯到，但是 be traced back to 呢？跟那个 date back to 相比，就 date back to 比较明确，就是年代很久远啊，某一个明确的年代。那 trace 其实是追踪的意思，好，所以我们这样追啊追啊追啊，差不多就追到那个时候。好，所以后面会有一个 roughly， 所以可以追溯到大概什么时候呢？到青铜器时代。那告诉你说，这个大约是怎么样？大约是公元3000年到公元1000年前啊。那这样的一些 mosaics 啊，所以这句话它真正的主词就是 old mosaics。那动词是 have been 所以中间那个 that 都是用来修饰这个 mosaics 的。好，所以这样子古老的 mosaics have been 已经被 unearthed 就是出土或者是被挖出来了这是在希腊，所以希腊已经有出土一些非常古老的其他的也非常古老的 mosaics。
So mosaics were incredibly popular during the time of the Greek and Roman empires. Incredibly popular is really what they say it is. Just about everywhere in Greek and Roman empires, there's just mosaics all over the place. And not a lot of them are really nice looking, to be honest. I really don't like the mosaics from this era. I think they're kind of boring.
好，那 mosaics were incredibly popular. Incredibly 就是非常或者是令人难以置信的 popular 就是非常受欢迎During the time of 就在什么时代呢？在 the Greek 那这个地方各位看到 the Greek and Roman empires 它加了 s， 所以呢它是这个希腊的 empire the Greek empire 还有the Roman empire 所以在这希腊罗马帝国期间呢，这个 mosaics 是令人难以置信的非常受到欢迎。
Starting from around the 3rd century BCE, mosaics in the Mediterranean began to feature tesserae. Tesserae are basically, it's Latin, and it means cube or die, like dice. So they're just using small square pieces. And so it's small square tiles. Rather than pebbles or round things, they're starting to find square things that fit together more firmly rather than round things that just sort of mostly fit together. And they're doing this to create more intricate or more complicated designs and patterns.
好，那我们接下来看到说呢，那 starting from 大概从什么时候开始呢？ Around 大约从公元前3世纪开始。Mosaics 在地中海地区的这个 Mosaics began to 开始 feature， 就是以什么为特色？它的特色开始变成怎么样？这个 Tesserae 中文把它翻成纸皮石啊。那其实这个字本来的意思就是一个 cube， 一个小方砖啊，或者像一个这个骰子一样，一个 dice 啊。所以它这里那这个字呢，一般的 native speakers 大概不知道这个字的意思，所以它后面马上用逗点啊，一双逗点加入了一个同位语，解释一下。所以 Tesserae 就是small 小小的 square tiles 小小的方砖啊，那是方的，而不是 rather than 而不是 pebbles 就是鹅卵石啊。那它是用这样的东西来 create 来创作 more 更加 intricate 就是繁复的 designs 设计或者一些花样，还有 patterns 还有一些图案。所以他们大概公元前3世纪他们开始用这种小方砖来做 mosaics。I
actually want to say that in English, we have a real habit of defining words that we don't know right in the article. So if you come across a word in an article and there's a comma immediately after it, keep reading a little bit and you might find out what that thing is without having to run to the dictionary.
Yeah, 好，英文里面呢，对于一些不是常出现的字，他们常常就会用同位语这种方式来解释，而且通常就是在这个字的后面直接加一个逗点啊，而且是一对逗点，这个逗点完后面还会有一个逗点。好，所以刚刚 Angela 老师说，有的时候看英文看到这种很大的字或者不认识的字呢，其实你再往下读，它底下可能就会告诉你这是什么意思。
Also, though, sometimes they'll explain it in the next sentence. So it's still worth trying to read on a little bit rather than immediately running to the dictionary.
对，有的时候它是直接用同位语，有的时候它可能在下一个句子，它会有一些线索或者是解释这个字的意思。所以呢，可以先读下去，看看后面有没有让你更清楚的地方。
So then the next paragraph, it says, mosaics were also widely used in and around religious sites. So in means directly in it, and around means nearby it.
所以呢 mosaics 它也是被广泛的使用在 were also widely used. In 就是在里面， around 就是周围，好，那 religious sites 就是宗教的场所，所以 mosaics 也常常在宗教场所里面或者是周围被广泛的使用。
So wall and ceiling mosaics decorated many Christian churches starting in the 4th century. And this is just continuing on the tradition of the Greek and the Roman Empire mosaics because the Christian churches were still living in the Roman Empire or just after it. So, no, they were still in the Roman Empire. So, of course, they're using the artistic medium of the day, which is mosaics.
好，所以呢，他说 wall 墙壁，好，还有这个 ceiling 天花板的 mosaics。那各位注意到这个 wall 跟 ceiling 在这里都没有加 s， 因为在这个地方他们是当作复合名词来用的，他们修饰的都是后面的那个 mosaics， 好，所以他们就没有加 s 了。所以在墙壁上或者在天花板上的这个 mosaics decorated， 它装饰了 many 很多的 Christian churches， 很多的基督教的教堂啊。那这个是从西元4世纪开始。
Artists in the 5th and 6th centuries adorned Jewish synagogues with floor mosaics. So synagogues for Jewish people is like churches for Christians.
好，那接下来讲到说 artists 一些艺术家啊，在第5、第6世纪的艺术家 adorned 就是装饰啊，这个字蛮正式的。它装饰呢，这个犹太人的这个 synagogues 就是犹太教堂啊。那 with 用什么装饰呢？用 floor mosaics。地板上面的 mosaics， 好，所以你可以 adorn 一个地方 with 某一个材料。
And in the 7th century, Islamic architects decorated mosques and palaces with mosaics. So mosques are to Islam as synagogues are to Judaism and churches are to Christians. Christianity. So mosques are places of worship and palaces are places of power, I guess. But I need to tell you, the quality of the 7th century Islamic architects, their mosaics are way well and above, much better than anything in the previous centuries. Like, you need to go look up mosaics in Islamic architecture and your mind will be blown. There's some really amazing stuff. They do like these dimensional ceilings. It's just beautiful.
好，所以呢，在西元7世纪的时候，伊斯兰的建筑师，这个architects 就是建筑师，他们 decorated 也是装饰的意思，他们装饰 mosques 就是清真寺，还有 palaces 宫殿with 用什么来装饰呢？也是用 mosaics。 所以各位这里注意到看到两个很类似，意思很类似，而且结构很类似的，你可以 adorn 某个地方 with 某个材料，你也可以 decorate 某个地方 with 某一个材料。
Now, mosaics found in Central America go all the way back to the time of the Maya Empire. And the Mayans were around 1500 BCE. But the classical period, the height of it is actually around basically 250 Common Era until about 900 CE. So they were doing their mosaics and beautiful stuff around the same time that the Islamic architects were doing beautiful stuff in the Mediterranean.
好，所以呢 mosaics 这个 found in Central America 在中美洲发现的 mosaics 他们 go all the way back 就是一路可以回溯到 the time of the Maya Empire 就是玛雅帝国那个时代。好，那玛雅帝国呢大概是西元前1500年到这个西元900年这个存在的一个文明。好，那刚刚 Angel 老师讲他们差不多在这个玛雅帝国文明的巅峰差不多是西元250年到900年之间所以他们做这些 mosaics 的时间其实跟我们刚刚上面提到的时间其实没有差太多。
So even though they're more or less doing it at the same time, they did not influence each other. The Mayans didn't know about the Mediterranean cultures and vice versa. So this discovery indicates that the art of creating mosaics developed independently in the region. If it developed independently, it means they developed it on their own. They didn't get told about it. So rather than being introduced by other cultures, being told by other cultures.
那这样的一个发现呢 indicates that 显示 the art of creating mosaics 就是创作 mosaics 这样的艺术 developed 发展 independently 是独立的发展和别的文化无关 in the region 在这个区域里面独立的发展其实我们想想这个应该也不是那么难，因为古时候的人他看到这些碎碎的东西他就觉得我如果把它拼起来而且很多颜色我把它拼起来拼个漂漂亮亮的图案蛮好的。
I really think it's just how people are led, of course, to the creation of mosaics. We just I could put these together and stick it on the wall. Neat.
Yeah, 而且拼起来之后可以粘在墙壁上或者放在地板上，蛮好的。
Yeah.
所以他们可以 develop 这个 independently. 然后所以他说这些都是独立发展的 rather than 而不是 being introduced 被引入 by 由 other cultures 由其他的文化引入的。所以他们自己独立发展出来了。
So, honestly, mosaics, I mean, some of the mosaics in the history of the world are not that interesting, but some of them are really, really cool. So I encourage you to just, there's so much that's available on Google. Just Google up some of these terms and see what you can see and see what you're interested in. That way you can find really cool stuff. So, yes, that's all we have for you on mosaics today. But tomorrow we're going to continue talking about mosaics. We're going to talk about the themes in various mosaics in various cultures. So, see you tomorrow. Until then, bye-bye.